Just a couple of days ago, we had the big release, Ubuntu 18.04, finally out. Its various flavors are also out. Kubuntu, Ubuntu, Lubuntu, Ubuntu Studio, Ubuntu Mate, etc., etc. Today I'm going to take a look at Kubuntu 18.04 Bionic Beaver. This is the KDE flavor of Ubuntu. Today I'm going to take a look at it. I'm going to do an install and review inside a VM. Kubuntu 18.04 Bionic Beaver. Looking at the release notes here, they have the release notes posted here on the Ubuntu.com website, the Ubuntu wiki. Let's see, Kubuntu 18.04 is an LTS release. Now, it's an LTS release, meaning it's a long-term support release. It will be supported for up to 3 years, should you choose to run Kubuntu 18.04 for that long. Now, mainline Ubuntu, the flagship edition of Ubuntu 18.04, it is a 5-year LTS. But the non-main editions, Kubuntu, Lubuntu, Xubuntu, those LTS releases are not 5 years. They are only supported for 3 years. So Kubuntu 18.04 will be supported for 3 years. It will be supported until April of 2021. Core desktops and application, of course, we have Plasma 5.12. That's the LTS release of Plasma as well. That is what KDE Plasma considers their long-term support version. The Plasma Dark theme is enabled by default. Now that's interesting. That's actually one of the things I usually do when I install KDE. The first thing I do is I switch over from the standard Breeze theme to the Breeze Dark theme. We have KDE applications, version numbers 17.12.3, Firefox 59, that's Quantum, LibreOffice 6, new KDE applications in the Ubuntu archive. So these will not be installed by default, but should you choose to download them from the Software Center, you would have Latte Dock, Falcon, Keo-G Drive, Peruse, various other applications, Krita, KStars, Amarok. Looking through some more of the release notes, the minimal install is an option in Kubuntu. For Kubuntu, the minimal install means you're removing the KDE PIM applications, you're removing LibreOffice, Cantata, and MPD, and additional internet and media applications. But the full Plasma desktop will be left in place. It just removes a lot of the extra applications. It also leaves your browser and VLC media player on the system, but it removes all your Office stuff. All the other multimedia stuff minus VLC would be removed. I'm not going to do a minimal install today, though. I'm going to go through the normal install of Kubuntu 18.04 because I want to take a look at it in its normal state. I'm not going to do minimal. So today I'm going to do an install inside a VM. I'm going to install it inside VirtualBox. Alright, so I've downloaded the ISO. The ISO was 1.7 gigs in size, so not a terribly lightweight ISO, but not that big. 1.7 gigs for a KDE distro is still a little on the small side. I expect it to have some applications installed by default, but it's not going to be, just loaded down with everything. We wait for the live environment to load up here. Sometimes it takes a minute or two for the live environments to load. We are booting off an ISO. You guys installing this on physical hardware, right now what you would be doing is booting it off of a live USB stick. Alright, so we have the options of try Kubuntu or install Kubuntu. I'm going to install Kubuntu. English was chosen as our language. Alright, we have a keyboard layout. It's already been chosen, English US, that's correct. I need to click next. The screen resolution here is kind of messed up, actually. Couldn't even see the continue button because it's kind of off to the side here. The guest editions are not working on the live environment here. The VirtualBox guest editions. That's why I don't have a full screen resolution. Which applications would you like to start with? Again, I'm going to do the normal installation. So that's going to include, our Office programs, all the multimedia programs and everything. If you want to, you can click minimal install. And basically that gives you Plasma, a web browser, and VLC, and not much else. Other options, download updates while installing Kubuntu. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and have that ticked on. There shouldn't be much to update. This was just released yesterday or the day before. So there shouldn't be many updates, if any. Install third-party software for graphics, Wi-Fi hardware, media formats. You need to tick this on. This will get us our proprietary graphics drivers, our video drivers. So if you're running like an AMD or an NVIDIA card, you really need to have that ticked on. Wi-Fi drivers, of course. If you're running a laptop, you need those. And additional media formats. This is your multimedia codecs for things like the VLC multimedia player. So I would always tick that on. The only people that usually will not tick that on are those free software people that do it out of principle, that try to stick mainly with free software. I'm not that much of a stickler. I try to use free software where I can, but sometimes you do have to use proprietary software. All right, where would you like to install Kubuntu? The options are guided, use entire disk. That's what I need. I'm going to let Kubuntu have the entire 15 gigs of this hard drive and this virtual machine I created. If you wanted to, though, you could go down here and choose manual and manually set up your partitions. Just going to click install now. All right, and then we get our warning. It's about to format the drive and write to the disk. I'm going to click continue. And the installation begins. One thing I do notice is the installer here. I don't know if this is the standard Ubiquiti installer. I mean, the screens kind of look the same, but everything is slightly out of place for some reason. I'm not sure. It's a little different than the Ubiquiti installer and all the other Ubuntu flavors I've reviewed so far. Anyway, time zone. It has correctly chosen the central time zone in the US for me. That's correct. We need to create a username and a password. I'm going to create a username DT. Password. Let's create a strong and complicated password for security reasons. All right. And then we have the option of either logging in automatically without a password or requiring a password to log in. I always like to require a password to log in for privacy reasons. All right. And that's it. The installation will continue. You have this progress bar at the beginning. Probably will take somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes for the installation to complete. So I'm going to pause the video. I'll be back once the installation is completed. Okay, the installation has completed. That installation was very fast. It definitely did not take 10 minutes, maybe 7 or 8 minutes. Very fast installation. I actually didn't time it, but it was a very quick install. Now, to complete installation, you always have to reboot your machine. Anytime you install an operating system, a reboot is required. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay, and we're rebooting our freshly installed Kubuntu 18.04 Bionic Beaver. I never get tired of saying that. Bionic Beaver. Alright, so we're at our login manager here. This is your standard KDE login manager, the KDM login manager. Alright, our username was DT. I created a password for that user when we did the install. Let's log in to our Plasma desktop. Should be Plasma 5.12. That's the LTS release of Plasma. There are more recent releases of Plasma, but 5.12 is what they consider the long-term support release for Plasma. And we wait for the desktop to finish loading up. Alright. And I will say, out of the box, it looks very nice. It looks very similar to pretty much every other Plasma desktop out of the box. The same KDE wallpaper. I do like the fact that they went with the dark theme. I really think that the Breeze dark theme is one of the best themes out there. So is the Breeze icon set. The Breeze icon set is fantastic. So I really, KDE gets that right. I mean, KDE is a gorgeous desktop environment. There are some things I don't like about KDE, but one thing I can't criticize KDE for is looks. KDE is a very attractive desktop environment. Let's go through the menu system and see what is installed by default. So I'm going to go down here to Applications, and I'm going to go through each of the menu categories here. Under Education, we have two subcategories. We have Math and Science. Under Math, we have LibreOffice Math. Under Science, we also have LibreOffice Math. So LibreOffice Math is the only educational program installed by default. Under the graphics category, we have GwenView. GwenView is KDE's image viewer. This is what you would use to view any kind of image or photo. Alright, also under the graphics category, we have LibreOffice Draw. We have Ocular, which is KDE's document viewer. That would be for viewing PDFs and such. We have Scanlight. Scanlight is a scanning utility. This would be for using for your scanner or your combination printer scanner. These days, usually your scanner is part of your printer. All right. Also, under Internet, we have an Internet category. We have Aggregator. Aggregator is a newsfeed aggregator for RSS feeds. It's a standard program for KDE. I hit the wrong about. Let me move this down a little bit. About Aggregator. Version 5.7.3. It's a KDE feed reader. Alright, also under Applications, under Internet, we have our Contact Print Theme Editor. We have Firefox, of course, for our web browser. According to the release notes, it was version 59. That would be Firefox Quantum, which I think is the same for every distro I think I've reviewed now in the Ubuntu family for the 18.04 release. They were all using version 59.0.2, which is Quantum. Yep, 59.0.2. Let's close this out. We're going to get our warning. You're about to close 2 tabs. Yes, I know. I did notice Firefox takes a little bit of time to load. Actually, and it's not KDE or any other desktop environment. Firefox just takes a little bit of time to load in these VMs. That was been the same for every single version of Ubuntu 18.04 I've looked at. All right, Kmail is our mail client, one of the standard KDE applications. Conversation, with a K, Conversation, is our IRC chat client. It's another KDE app. And by default, it wants to connect to the Freenode network to the Kubuntu channel. So that's awesome. So it's already set up to connect you to the Kubuntu support channel. All right, also under Internet, we have KRDC, which is for remote desktop. We have KTNEF. We have KTorrent, which is a BitTorrent client. We have the PIM setting exporter, and we have the Civ editor. Let's open up the Civ editor. Took a little bit of time to launch. All right, about the Civ editor. This is version 5.7.3. Really doesn't tell me too much about it other than the Civ editor version 5.7.3. I'm not really familiar with this application. That's why I actually opened it. All right, under Multimedia. Multimedia, we have Cantata for the music player. Cantata is a MPD music player, meaning you have to install, well, it's already installed, the music player daemon, which is called MPD. You have to configure MPD to use Cantata. So, because of that, I'm not a big fan of including something like Cantata by default as your music player on your distros. I really think they should go with something that doesn't use MPD for a music player. If people want to configure MPD and use it, that's great, but you probably shouldn't put something like Cantata on your ISO, in my opinion. I wouldn't put it on mine if I was, creating a distro. K3B is our disk burning utility. K3B is probably the best disk burning utility available on Linux. It's definitely the best free and open source disk burning utility available. I install K3B on all my systems, regardless of what desktop environment I end up running. K3B always ends up getting installed. It's one of the 2 KDE apps I install on every single system, no matter what. I always install K3B, and when I get to it, I always install Kdenlive video editor. I'm not sure if Kdenlive is actually installed by default here on Kubuntu 18.04, but if it's not, I would definitely install Kdenlive. Pulse Audio Volume Control is also installed under our Multimedia category, and VLC. VLC is our multimedia player. It's what most people would use to play their videos. VLC Media Player 3.0.1. It's a very recent release of VLC. Under Office, let's see, some of the same stuff we've already seen, but we do have the LibreOffice suite. We have Base, Calc, Draw, Impress, and Writer. I'm going to open up Impress, which is the presentation program. Basically, LibreOffice is our free and open source alternative to something like Microsoft Office. Alright, about LibreOffice. This is LibreOffice 6.0.3.2. So LibreOffice version 6. Alright, under Applications, under Office. Everything else in this category other than LibreOffice we've seen in other subcategories. So let's go to the Settings category. We have Keyboard Input Method. We have OpenJDK for Java. And then we have the System Settings, which is basically our control panel. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to come back to this in a little bit. We may play around with some of the settings. All right. Under System, we have Discover. Discover is our graphical package manager. This is our software center. This is a standard KDE app. And we wait for it to load. Taking a minute here. I'm assuming I'm waiting for something to load. I'm assuming, yeah, okay. I was about to say, surely this whole screen is not blank. Yeah, it took a little bit of time for all that to load. All right, and we can search for applications. We can search for applications by category here in the left-hand column, or we can actually just do a search if we know the program we want to install. For example, GIMP was not installed by default. I did a search for GIMP. Right here, first thing, GIMP, the GNU image manipulation program. It has an install button. I click that, it begins to install GIMP. Pretty easy. The Discover Software Center, it's not complicated at all. Your grandmother could use it. All right, also under the System category, we have Dolphin. Dolphin is the file manager in the KDE desktop. One of the better file managers we have, actually. I really like the Dolphin file manager. It's one of the things I enjoyed when I was using KDE earlier this year. I actually lived in KDE for about a month. I like the Dolphin file manager. It's really nice. We have a program called Info Center. This is a KDE app. It basically tells you system information. For example, we're running Kubuntu 18.04, obviously. KDE Plasma 5.12.4. KDE Frameworks 5.44. Qt version 5.9.5. Kernel version 4.15. OS type 64-bit, of course. And then processor and memory. Of course, this is the VM we're running here. All right, also under System, we have K3B again, KDE's Partition Manager for managing, editing partitions. It's not something you would normally do, but it's good to have that on in Kubuntu if you were using it as a live USB, because you could use Kubuntu as like a live rescue USB stick. Console, of course, is KDE's terminal. We have the terminal open. We already know what the kernel was because the previous system monitoring program told us, but if we didn't know, uname --r would also return the kernel version 4.15.0-20-generic. So it's the generic kernel. Also under System, we have KSysGuard, which is another system monitoring program. All right, let's check out CPU and memory usage here. I'm going to go to System Load here. And we have, I gave this machine 1 core of my 6-core CPU, and I probably should have gave it 2 cores because it's using 100% of that 1 core. I would not have expected this to be that bad. I'm not sure why it's using 100% of 1 core, because nothing is going on other than the system monitor, really. I mean, there's some background services, I'm sure, running, but it wasn't that bad. I mean, I only gave the GNOME edition, the mainline edition of Ubuntu 18.04, 1 core of my 6-core CPU, and it wasn't running at 100%. Okay, now it's dropping down to 6%, 4%. Yeah, that's normal. But there, for a while there, for several seconds, it was pegged at 100%. I'm not sure what that was. That's strange. Memory usage. Memory usage is actually not that bad. For Plasma, it's only using about 690 megs of the 4 gigs of RAM that I gave this VM. That's pretty good for Plasma. So that's not too bad. All right, back to the menu system. Under the system category, we have K-System Log, K-Wallet Manager. We have the Muon Package Manager, which is another package manager. And if you didn't want to use Discover, Muon is very similar to something like the Synaptic Package Manager, for those familiar with that. I kind of would rather use something like Muon than something like Discover, because Discover, you saw how long things took to load in Discover. It's because of all the graphics and everything in it. It's basically like pulling things down from the web. It's almost like a website. The Muon Package Manager, there's no fancy graphics or anything. You just search for a package to install. Say I wanted to just install Thunderbird for an email client. I just search for Thunderbird. Here it is. I click on it. Right-click on it. I can mark for installation. It's marked for installation. I click OK, and that thing will start to install. I'm not going to install Thunderbird, though, here on camera. All right. Under Utilities, we have a Utilities category. We have Arc for an archiving tool. This would be for zip, unzip, tar files, that sort of thing. It's a standard KDE application. Also under Utilities, we have Kate. Kate is KDE's plain text editor. A really neat plain text editor. One of the cool things about Kate is you see it almost has two columns here. You see this left-hand column. If I had a long document here, you can actually see a preview of the whole document here in this that right-hand column. All right. KCalc is our calculator. Cleopatra is our certificate manager. We have Knotes for our note-taking app. We have Spectacle for a screenshot utility. Really neat little screenshot utility. Actually, Spectacle, you can tell it to take a screenshot of all your monitors. For example, I have a 3-monitor system. You can tell it to take a current screen. You can tell it to take a screenshot of the active window. For example, the Spectacle window here, if that's what I wanted to screenshot. Or you can specify an exact position to screenshot. You can also set up a delay. Most of the time when you take a screenshot, you don't want to click screenshot and have it take an instant screenshot, because your cursor and everything is going to be in the way because you just clicked on something. So you usually want to give it a couple of seconds to get out of the way. All right, and that is everything in the menu system. Okay, so I'm going to right click on the desktop. I'm going to choose Configure Desktop. All right, let's see what kind of wallpapers we have. Now, of course, we have some standard KDE wallpapers. A couple of them I've seen a million times. Of course, the default one is a standard KDE wallpaper. So is this one here. This blue one, I've seen that a million times. It's actually a really nice wallpaper. For those that like kind of a teal color wallpaper, some abstract art, that's pretty cool. And we've got some bluish, purplish things going on here. That's not a bad wallpaper. This one here in the center, I don't think I've seen this one before. Pretty neat wallpaper, but honestly, I'm not impressed with the wallpaper pack. Every other flavor of Ubuntu 18.04 really just blew me away with some of the gorgeous wallpapers they had. There's really nothing here in Kubuntu 18.04, which is a little disappointing. I'm just actually going to stick with the default wallpaper, because honestly, I think that was the best one of the bunch of what was being offered. I'm going to go to System Settings here. This is our control center, basically. I'm going to choose Workspace Theme. And by default, looks like it's set to Kubuntu, but I believe the Kubuntu theme is really just the Breeze Dark theme. I don't think it changes anything. Let me open up the Dolphin File Manager. Actually, the Kubuntu theme has a light theme, because this is the light theme, Breeze Dark. If I hit Apply, okay, that's Breeze Dark. I thought the Breeze Dark theme was supposed to be the default theme, but I guess it's not. The default theme is still a light theme. Now the panel is dark. Maybe that's what they were talking about. Maybe the panel by default is now dark, but the actual window themes, it's still a light theme. Me, I actually prefer the dark, so I'm going to switch it back to the Breeze Dark. And that's a really nice dark theme. We also have options to change the desktop theme. For those that want to run any kind of desktop widgets, this is where you would change the theme for that. We have cursor themes as well. There's only 2 cursor themes, those, Breeze and Breeze Snow. Basically, white or black cursor. And then we have options to change the splash screen. Not going to do any of that. Back to the system settings, we could change colors. We could change the system fonts. I'm actually fine with the fonts here. They're using the Noto Sans font, which is a really nice free open source font. We have the options in the settings manager here to change things like desktop behavior, desktop effects. I never like turning on these because I'm not one of these people that like a lot of whiz bang on my desktop. But for those of you that want to turn on things like the magnifier, the looking glass, the wobbly windows, things like that, it's all here for you. We have things for touchscreen. We have options for screen locking. All right, back to the main system settings here. We have personalization. We can change basically account details. What is this? Our user details, user manager. Yeah. Regional settings, notifications, applications, online accounts. We have network stuff. Of course, hardware preferences, input devices, display and monitor, multimedia, power, driver manager, printer, removable storage. All right, so I'm going to open up a terminal here. One thing I'm curious about is snaps. How easy is it to install a snap? For example, usually if GIMP is not installed on an Ubuntu or an Ubuntu-based system, I usually install it as a snap. So sudo install snap, or sorry, I got that backwards. Sudo snap install GIMP. It's been a long day. I need another cup of coffee. All right. Now, of course, it asks for our root password. You give it a root password. And, yeah, GIMP is installing as a snap. So all that is baked in. So snaps are ready to go. So I'm just going to minimize that and let that run. Now, obviously, this is a very quick install and overview of Kubuntu 18.04. But what are my initial thoughts and impressions? Yeah, it's great, actually, at the install. Very easy, very fast. One thing I don't like is their installer, their version of the Ubiquity installer, I'm assuming that's Ubiquity, looks odd. Things just don't look right. It looks like everything is kind of out of place from where it is on the standard Ubiquity installer. I'm not sure why that is. But the install is the same as far as ease of use. You click OK 3 or 4 times, you're done in 10 minutes. The installer has to get an A+ just for that. The actual KDE Plasma desktop. Love it. I mean, it's beautiful desktop. I mean, I love, you really can't say anything negative as far as the look and feel of KDE. Even giving this machine 1 core of my 6-core CPU, everything is kind of snappy, actually. I mean, things just kind of open. And the Dolphin File Manager actually just opened. I minimized it, though. I shouldn't have done that. Things close. I mean, there's a little lag, the menu system. But this is not too bad for a VM that I only gave 1 core of my CPU to. Gave it 4 gigs of RAM, though. I gave it plenty of RAM to work with. One disappointing thing is customization as far as the theming options. This has been the worst Ubuntu flavor out of the bunch I've reviewed so far. Budgies, Ubuntu, Mainline Ubuntu, Ubuntu Mate. This one comes with the least amount of theming options, icon sets, wallpapers. You're pretty much stuck with what you get here. I mean, obviously, you can go out, install new wallpaper packs, new icon sets, and everything. But I wish they would have included a few of those by default on the ISO. Your ISO size was almost 2 gigs in size anyway. It was like 1.7 gigs in size. You could, add a few extra wallpapers to it, in my opinion, because it makes a big first impression, the theming options and everything. I know that's a minor gripe. Overall, I give KDE, the Plasma Desktop 5.12, and the Kubuntu 18.04 release. It gets an A in my book. Before I go, I want to do a special thanks to all my patrons, all my Patreon supporters. A.K. Ron, Mr. Neely, Pops, John, Brian, Carl, Greg, Carlos, Rob, Matt, Darkwin, Mark, Christian, Jake, Benjamin, Stephen, Marcus, Interceptor, Bob, and Leor. You guys rock. You guys help make this show possible. Peace, guys.